All right, they're all in the waiting room. We can let them all in. Oh, cool. You guys are coming in. Elizabeth and Hope and Dawn and Janet and Nancy and Denise and Rebecca and Candace and Amber. This is great. Thank you, Patty. Thank you guys for joining. It's wonderful to see you all. Hi, John. And we're here tonight. It's interesting. We have almost 180 people that are registered for the webinar. We'll end up probably with, I'm going to say 35 to 40 people listening in. What's interesting is we're getting about at least we'll have about 50 to 60, maybe 70 people listen to the podcast. More people are listening to podcasts now because I think a lot of people are zoomed out a little bit. But you guys are very special to us. So I want you to move your mouse. I want you to go to the green share button, left of the green share button. You know what I'm going to say. Go to the chat box, click on it. Please tell us where you're from. Oh, look at this. There's, of course, Siri's the first one. John is from Cincinnati, Ohio. Deborah, she's from Orlando. You guys sign in, tell us where you're from. We'd love to hear from you and know where you're from because we'd love to know where you guys are logging in from. Allentown, Pennsylvania, Alabama, East Hampton, New York. Ooh, it's pretty up there. Hi, y'all. Where are you from,
Jersey.
Sohaila? So we've got these
That's
people
me from Georgia.
Yeah, from all over. And we're very excited that you guys are joining us tonight. So if you have a question, we try to keep you all on mute. We don't show your video. I'm very sorry about that, although I'd love to get to know your cat better. Do write a question, write a comment, share with us because you're the ones that are here live and you're the ones that we really appreciate that you showed up. So thank you so much for that. So I'm going to do a quick introduction. I'm Sarah Cooperman. I'm the CEO of SCW and Water in Motion and our new SEAT program, Supported Exercise for Ageless Training. And we're going to be talking today about shredding for the summer. As summer approaches, many clients are focused on cutting down for the beach, weddings, or even family trips. This is not inherently bad, but can often lead to unhealthy and unsafe habits. Join our panel of experts as they dissect how we can appease our clients with results, but also guide them to long-term sustainable weight loss and overall health. And we've got Dr. Jonathan Mike with us. Dr. Mike teaches at the Sports Performance Program at the Grand Canyon University in Phoenix. He's a strength and conditioning coach at major Division I universities, and he's spoken at over 45 events, including just a ton of others. He's written 11 book chapters on sports and nutrition and strength and conditioning. So he's gonna.
I just signed a contract to write my first book for Human Kinetics.
Oh my God, that's fantastic. Well, we're going to be carrying that book, and we see Mike. We see John at Armenia convention, so this is exciting. And we've got Siri Chalazi with us. She doesn't love when I mention this, but I'm sorry. She's really smart. She has an MBA from Harvard Business School, a master's degree in public policy from the Harvard Kennedy School. She's a research fellow at Women and Public Policy Programs. She's a recognized expert promoting gender equality. She's a master trainer in too many programs from BAR, all these Group X programs, and she's got 15 years in the fitness industry. So welcome, Siri.
Thank you, Sarah. Great to be here, everybody.
And we've also got Sohaila Digsby, and Sohaila, it's not Sohaila, it's Sohaila. I'm doing better. Yes. I'm really trying to get it. She's one of our favorite registered dietitian that speaks at almost every single one of our conferences. I said for the past 8 years, it's just not long
2014.
enough. Yeah, just not long enough. She's an author. She's developer of the life-changing 52-day Best Body Countdown program. And she works with gyms, and she has over 20 years experience as a fitness pro and RD. And she provides nutrition coaching and runs an online membership-based group that's not just about the weight you lose, but the life you gain. Love that. I think that's just, you got to like I don't know, service mark that or something. She's authored 3 books to help fitness pros guide their clients to their goals and maintain their best body. So we've got amazing people here today. We're going to start right off. And John, I'm going to start with you. How do you approach the subject of clients wanting to accelerate their weight loss for the summer?
Yeah, good question. I'm glad to be on, and thanks everyone for joining. I think it's important to say, and I mentioned this earlier, and I've actually talked about the same thing both in classes and presenting. But like quick, rapid, and fat loss should probably not be used in the same sentence. When people gain weight over time, I mean, certainly it's a combination of a multitude of factors. Stress related, hormonal related, obviously diet and lifestyle play huge roles. But when people put on 15, 20 pounds, unless they're purposely doing it for a contest, it didn't take you 15 or 20 days. It took you several weeks, it took you several months. So, getting it off is certainly a larger but very achievable task if you maintain consistently and keep things, very simple. We're very inundated with, I have to do this program and do that program and do the most complicated things. But I can tell you from experience, and obviously with the science, most of the time the boring and consistent regimens work long term. And people think, it took me X amount of months to gain this amount. It's going to take me, even shorter or same amount of time to get it off. Some of that does have some truth to it, but it's overall like behavioral and lifestyle changes. I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to. And then they think, I achieved this and I can just go back to what I used to. This is not the case. Do you want to be a statistic, or do you want to actually achieve long-term sustainable, health goals that you can inspire, influence others to become?
Yeah, but before we turned the camera on, we were chatting, and I said I really liked your comment regarding that, because when I used to train people on pregnancy and exercise, I'd always say it took you 9 months to get there, honey. It's going to take you 9 months at least to get back. So you got to think about that. We gain this weight so gradually, especially a lot of people over the past 24 months, let's say, and then they want to lose it in like 4 weeks. And it just doesn't happen like that. Siri, I saw you nodding. So
Yeah. I couldn't agree more with what John just said. I'm always interested in probing a little bit behind why clients and group exercise students are weight obsessed, because at the end of the day, your weight is a number on the scale that nobody else sees except you, right? No one knows how much you weigh unless you tell them. So I'm trying to talk to them and understand what's really the motivation behind the weight loss. Is it that you're just trying to look and feel your best? Maybe you have a high school reunion coming up, or your wedding or a family member's wedding, and you just kind of want to be at your best. Or are you trying to fit into a pair of pants or a dress that doesn't fit any longer? Or maybe friends ask you to go hiking later this summer, and you're starting to get worried about whether you're going to be able to do it physically and whether you're going to be comfortable doing it. So often there's some other bigger purpose that, to John's point, relates to lifestyle much more holistically. That's kind of the driving motivation why people want to lose weight. And I think once we latch onto those other driving motivations, we can then start having much more productive, much more holistic conversations about things like lifestyle, exercise, not necessarily adding more hardcore exercise in, but adding more movement in during the day, adding movement outside, because we know that we humans are holistic beings. So yes, there's the physical aspect of being in better shape, but mental health and physical health are very correlated. And research shows that moving outside, and particularly in nature, has obviously wonderful physical benefits, but can also have great mental health benefits. So that's one thing that I always suggest to everybody, and something that I do religiously myself, is a 45-minute walk outside every day. It doesn't have to be super fast. If you're fit, it can be fast, but if you're not that fit, it can be a slow walk. But there's the physical benefit that comes from it, but also mental health, motivation, and overall wellness.
And so, Hilla, what are your thoughts on how do we calm people down from wanting to accelerate this, this weight loss? Like, they wait until the last minute. It's kind of like a kid in school who waits till 2 nights before because he needs that rush to get the paper done. And I'm like, it's not going to happen that quickly, this weight loss.
Well, and I hear so often somebody says to me, 10 years ago, I could just drop 10 pounds right before between spring break and summer start or whatever. And they say, I used to be able to do this. I used to be able to do this. And I'm realizing that they don't know what some of us know as professionals about your resting metabolism and your two hormones that control your satiety and your hunger. So your leptin controls your satiety and your ghrelin controls your hunger. And those can be thrown off from all those times between spring and summer that you drop 10 pounds. The leptin research is showing that it affects your satiety a year and more down the road if you're doing those quick fixes. And even the research that we've been able to see from Biggest Loser in 2016 has been kind of monumental in that we really never studied people who went hard and didn't go home, just went hard, and then see what happens when they did go home 6 years later. And so I always like to remind people from a practitioner standpoint is I can't in good conscience encourage you to do something that I know is going to have long-term effects and even short-term effects. I have people that are doing juice cleanses and you can test their RMR and you can see within 2 weeks, their juice cleanse has just smacked their metabolism down by half. And so whether they can build that back up or not depends on how many times they've done that to their body and how much their body is willing to trust them to expend energy normally again. And trust is a strong word because obviously your cells don't do trust, but it's more of a, does your body allow you to burn the metabolism like you want it to and expend energy like you want it to after you've done that so many times. So I like to bring people to the science point if they're willing. A lot of times they may or may not be willing. And so I kind of tell them, kind of like Siri was saying, I ask them where they're coming from and then kind of take from where they're coming and try to appeal to the part where I think that they would most, whether it's mental health or big picture or disordered eating versus healthy eating, or muscle loss versus weight loss. I try to just appeal to whatever area that they might be willing, because a lot of times when they're determined to shred or cut or whatever it is, they don't care if they're doing dumb things. They don't care. They just want to fit into something or to have no cellulite when they walk down the beach or whatever it is. So I tell them, I know you're concerned about the humps and bumps, but I'm concerned for your big picture. Can I give you some insight beyond this summer and see if that can appeal to them at all?
John, I saw you kind of nodding in there, so I got to come back to you and say, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, this is something that needs to be addressed. I mean, you look at statistics, whether they're from CDC or, national, health statistics. I mean, 45 to approaching 50% of the United States, is overweight and obese. You look at the people that actually died, of COVID, 80% of those that were hospitalized were obese, so it's the underlying issue that's causing this. Now, people say, well, it's all sugar. And I'm not pointing to one specific, macronutrient or micronutrient, or something like that, because the fact is that it's a multitude of factors, and kind of leading in obviously to the next question, sometimes when you work with people, you have to meet them where they are, as opposed to meeting them where you think they should be at that particular point in time. You can't tell people, well, I only eat 2 meals a day. Okay, great. Now you got to eat 5 or 6 meals a day. That's you have over expectations or unrealistic expectations for them. So a lot of times you have to meet them where they are and give them an opportunity to alter attitude and mentality and lifestyle. So,
yeah, interesting. What would you change for a client to increase weight loss? Because if they say, like I've got a girlfriend, she walks, she plays paddle, she's active every single day. She's active and she babysits her grandchildren and she's overweight. So I've got to say, what should she change? She's like, well, I think I'm going to go on some crash diet and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, I don't know. I mean, Siri, how do you deal with that?
So I'll let Sahela speak to the detailed nutrition of this, because I'm a group exercise instructor and we have to always be very careful to stay within our scope of practice. So I'm not obviously qualified to provide kind of nutrition guidance. But the thing that I do tell my students, and what I would tell your friend, is if you're planning to lose weight, you have to do it the same way that you are going to keep it off for the rest of your life. Because most people's goal is also to keep it off the rest of your life. They don't say, oh, I want to lose weight just for the next 3 months and then it can all come running back and I don't care. They actually want it to stay off. So what that means, right, is I have these people, for example, who are trying to lose weight for their wedding and they say, okay, Siri, I'm going to work out 2 hours a day. So what should I do? And I asked them, oh, well, this is wonderful. Are you also planning on working out 2 hours a day every day after your wedding? Oh, of course not. So then I have the conversation right up front with them and I say, okay, I want you to realize that you're probably going to lose some weight in the lead up to your wedding, but it's going to all come back. And like Sahila was saying, some of the research suggests that even more comes back later because that crash dining has had negative long-term consequences for your metabolism. So I would say, whatever you can commit to in terms of your healthy eating habits, the amount of time that you spend working out, what types of exercise that you do, figure out what's realistic for you, and then do that as a permanent lifestyle, how you live your life, and not as a short-term regimen that you think is going to end. And that's the best way, if you're going to lose weight, to do it in a healthy and sustainable way.
I am smiling because I'm drawing this correlation in my head, and it's going to offend someone, but it's my webinar. I don't care. My son is training his dog. Okay, so I'm talking about a 4-month-old pit bull, and he's working with the trainer to learn how to train the dog. And the trainer said, you've got to think how you're going to be living your life. And that's how you're going to train the dog. Because you have to think, if you're going to be able to take that dog to the park every single day and let her run around like a lunatic every single day, then that's great. That's something you should do. I know the puppy has energy, but you've got to figure out what's going to be your lifestyle. Yeah. So I hate to compare your clients, Siri,
to the pit bull, to the baby pit bull,
to a baby pit bull. But the reality is we have to think how we're going to, and also how can we encourage them to change their life that's sustainable and say, you know what, if you have been sitting on the couch, 24/7, you're going to have to get off the couch, or there's going to be consequences. And if you're an older adult, you have to think about do you want to be able to babysit? Do you want to feel healthy and be able to take the grandkids to the park? If you're in a relationship with someone and they want to go hiking somewhere, do you want to be able to join them? Or no, I'm sorry, I can't go to Paris because I can't walk that much. Right. I'm not going to do that bike trip, even with an electric bike. I'm just scared. I don't have the balance. So it's these quality of life things that in some ways you can motivate them through, I don't know if it's fear or it's just like a little carrot saying these are things you can do. So it's pretty interesting. Jonathan, what do you think can help change a client to increase weight loss? You also deal with athletes that are dealing with having to reach a certain weight to compete.
Yeah, I think it's different, obviously, between males and females, and then just general public. I mean, there's a huge difference between weight loss and actual fat loss. I mean, anybody can really lose weight. Just go to the sauna for 5 or 10 minutes, weigh yourself, and then, you drop, obviously, because of dehydration. Fat loss is a different animal that takes a different approach. But there are some things that you can do to help accelerate the fat loss, particularly in the general population. Assuming that you have all the small things, the foundational things correct, obviously what your sleep quality is like, are you drinking, throughout the day, are you eating regularly, how many days a week do you train, assuming all that stuff. One of the things that people can do is to increase their protein intake. Typically if you look at the RDA, it's 0.8 grams per kg, which is not even close to enough. Generally speaking, you want at least a gram per pound per pound per kg. So, if you weigh 170 pounds, you should be eating around 170 grams, of protein a day. That seems like it's a lot, but if you break it down to 3 or 4 meals per day, that's the amount of protein that you should be getting, per meal. So it varies. Athletes need to be a little bit higher. If you look at position statements from International Society of Sports Nutrition, which I've spoken at before, I'm actually speaking again next month. For athletes, you're looking at 1.6 up to 2.2. There have been some studies that have looked at 3.3 grams per kg, and one that was about 6 weeks that was 4.0 grams per kg, and none of those had any type of negative side effects on, kidney and liver enzymes like all these other, medical doctors, talk about on TV. So, increased protein intake can help increase fat loss because it increases satiety, of course, but it also maintains lean body mass, which is what you want over periods of, because you have to reduce your caloric intake. So even for competitors, women, male competitors, as their caloric deficit, as they're in a caloric deficit, their actual true protein requirement actually goes up because they have to maintain as much lean body mass as possible. So obviously with the protein intake, if you're someone that experiences a lot of stress, I would encourage you to go get a full CBC or complete blood count and a hormonal profile done so you can see what's going on internally, obviously with estrogen and progesterone, because high stress jobs, chronically high stress, can severely alter hormonal levels and concentrations, which will affect weight gain and or weight loss, particularly when it comes to thyroid function. So those are some things that I would encourage people to do, assuming you do the foundational work already and you're consistent, increase protein intake, and then look for optimal hormonal levels.
It's always fascinating when you get your blood work done. I recently had it done. I went to the Mayo Clinic and did this amazing executive checkup that they have, where you feel like you're in, an airplane lounge, where you get your Wi-Fi and you got like your little, your coffee and your little snacks. But it was amazing. I got my blood work done, and they had told me before, you're low on vitamin D, and I was kind of nervous about it. And over the winter, I was outdoors so much that my vitamin D now is fine, but my B12 was low. And the first thing out of their mouth was, are you a vegan, a vegetarian? And I'm like, no. And I was not eating enough protein for all the exercise I was getting. And it does not, so Hala, you'll be very proud of me, does not have to be in the form of meat all the time. We love beans, right? Yeah.
We love beans.
I've learned a lot from her, and it's interesting. So Hala, how do you make sure you're getting enough protein?
Well, and the calculations, like Dr. Mike was saying, are different for different people. I think I agree that the RDA is a little too low. I think an easy way to do it is to find a range. And when I work with people one-on-one, I'm usually always going to adapt what I want them to do from what they're already doing. So I wouldn't give advice usually to someone until I've taken a recall from them of what's typical. And then I even have certain questions I ask that unpack what's really typical, because what they tell me is typical isn't always right on, because they're just not that self-aware in nutrition. I call that chair in front of me that people pay cash to sit in front of my amnesia chair. I'm like, why do you come, pay the money, and sit there and say, I don't know what I eat. I don't know what I had yesterday. But it's part of the problem, is that lack of self-awareness, and that we set a goal maybe, and then we think of the goal instead of what we're really doing as what we're really doing. And so they'll tell me, well, here's what I do typically. And I'm like, okay, thank you for that recall. Now let's talk about last week and see how that compares to what you gave me as your typical. And then we express how real life happens between the goal. And I love that you've set a goal, but let's see what we can do strategy wise to be closer to actually hitting that goal. And so what a lot of times it is, taking what people are doing and inching up, saying, okay, sounds like you're doing a good breakfast. Could you add this or that for protein, or swap this or that out? But mostly I take people, whatever weight they are. And I think most people do work in pounds, even though the research in kgs, kilograms. So I try to tell them, the research shows your weight to half is the minimum. So if you weigh 150, you can't eat less than 75 grams and expect yourself to maintain any lean mass. And then up to 150 where you do weigh. But in the practitioner side, we have these adjusted calculations that we do if someone is very over fat and a lot of their composition is fat, then we don't need to fuel the fat as much as the lean mass. And that can get really complicated, and I don't need to get into all of it, but it's not as cut and dry. But I do say if we're using a range, and I use the 150 for an easy number, 75 to 150 is a big range. And then I help them tweak where they should be based on the kind of conditioning they're doing, based on if they're creating a calorie deficit, which, like Dr. Mike said, if you create a calorie deficit, you have to make sure that a higher percentage of your total calories are protein in order to preserve that lean muscle mass. And what I really just want everybody to take home is that anytime you lose weight, if you are losing muscle mass to make the scale happy, to make that number give you a thumbs up when you see the mail, you're losing. And I tell people you're losing, not losing weight, but you're losing. Every time you lose muscle mass, especially as you age, especially for women, because it's harder to regain it, then you're losing in the big picture. You're losing your metabolic power. You're losing potential immunity down the road. You could potentially be losing bone mass. So there's lots being lost at the expense of that shred or that cut if you're willing to go fast enough. And there's a great stat that I wanted to share with you guys that I've recently looked up. And it's 3 different ways you can lose weight. One is by diet alone, one is diet and cardio, and one is diet and strength training, which might include some cardio. And each pound that you lose, if you're doing just diet without any exercise, 30% of that pound is muscle loss. Each pound that you lose, 20% is muscle loss if you're doing diet and cardio. Only 3% is muscle loss if you're doing diet change and strength training at the same time. And I think one of the beautiful things about strength training, and I think all my colleagues would agree, is that if you are really not fueling yourself well, you can't really make major gains in strength training as much. And so that helps you to fuel better. And so I think one of the benefits of people strength training while they try to lose weight is that it helps them not undereat as much as they tend to do when they're gung-ho and charge. I've got this mission to do by, July 17th or whatever it is when their class reunion is. And so it helps to pair those two together. So that's one of my biggest tips is for people to do the resistance training or / strength training while they're eating a little more protein, because those go together.
I heard that same statistics about the 30%, but I heard it was muscle, bone, muscle and bone loss, which is interesting. I mean,
I think 30% is the minimum of muscle, and then you have bone and fluid loss. So I tell people, if your genes say you're doing good, but your scale says you're doing bad, which one are you going to choose? You got to pick one. I always tell them you got to pick one. Pick the genes, right? Because if the scale says you're doing good, but the genes are still tight, that means you're losing lots of other stuff too. And almost all the time when people lose weight for purpose, for a shred, for something quick, it's very hard for them to not be dehydrated with muscle loss. We only want them to lose fat tissue. And that takes slow and steady, because otherwise we lose other things. They really might not like the way they look in the bathing suit once they lose muscle and fluid.
Can you also provide a link to that research, and we'll make sure to put it in the recording?
Yeah, I'll have to get it back to you.
Yeah, it's got, I know, I think I saw it somewhere too, but we'll find it and we'll put it in the recording, because those are great things to share with our clients. You know what I mean? Those are just wonderful.
I just shared it at Florida Mania, so I know I have it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's wonderful stuff. And Siri, you're like this expert in Group X. So when you're designing your classes, have you found that you've been adding in more strength training lately? Or is there a program that kind of really helps with that?
Yeah, I'm constantly educating people on the benefits of strength training and on the importance of doing strength training. And one of the funny things, so there's a lot of education that needs to happen. I actually like to call it resistance training. Same thing, but a lot of people, when they think strength, they think just dumbbells or traditional weights, right? But any kind of resistance, it could be your body weight. Doing a push-up on the floor with your body weight is a lot harder than an overhead press with dumbbells that weigh 10 pounds, because your body weighs a lot more than 10 pounds. And so I want to kind of expand people's understanding of all the ways in which we can resistance train, so that if you're traveling and you don't have your lovely 10-pound dumbbells with you, you're not like, oh my goodness, I can't do anything, because you can still do a lot just with body weight only. But we are constantly talking about that. And then the other thing that I like to educate my clients on in the group exercise context is the importance of progressing your workouts. So when I have people who have been coming to my classes for 2 months and I see them still, let's use that dumbbell example just because it's easy, they started with 10 pounds, or call it 5, and they're still doing 5. I go up to them in a nice way after class and I say, I see you're getting a lot stronger. Next week, I want you to grab the 8s. And by the way, the same principle applies to cardio too, or anything else, right? Is the better you get at something, the more muscle mass you build, the stronger you get. You need to keep challenging yourself and increasing the resistance to keep seeing results and to not slide backwards. So that's the other thing that we have to you really challenge our people on. Of course, you can do partially also progress exercises by using range of motion. So as they get better, maybe they're able to squat deeper, maybe their push-ups get deeper. And that, of course, increases the challenge as well if you're not holding an external piece of resistance like a dumbbell.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I like that. And sometimes women they still get scared of the word strength training. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to get bulky. I'm like, oh my God, this is driving me crazy. We got a really
Yeah.
good question from Liz. And Jonathan, I'm going to ask you, for 50 plus women who strength train, do you advise about 1 gram of protein per pound body weight? And is an increase in good fats also important for hormones?
The answer to this is yes and yes. So if you are consistent with higher protein intake, I mean, let's just say you're someone who's, like I said, 170 pounds, you're consistently getting in the range of, maybe 150 to 170. Because let's just be real and realistic. I mean, unless you're super, anal, you're not going to hit exactly 170 like every single day. There's always going to be some type of range, 150, 170, 180 or whatever it may be. But if you're consistently getting that, then I would say that you're in a good position to increase, right? So, if you're, because, and I'll tell you why more protein is actually needed as you get older. Because if you go back to position statements of International Society of Sports Nutrition, and they're really the best organization for sports nutrition, more protein is required as you get older because your body becomes more resistant to the anabolic effects of amino acids. So you actually need more protein at a given dose, and even more to get the same amount of protein quality and to maintain amino acid pool, both for lean body mass, whether that's some of that goes towards, excrement, but you need more protein as you age, not only to maintain lean body mass and decrease body composition, but you need more because your body becomes more resistant to the anabolic effects of amino acids versus somebody who's might be like, 18 to 25, or 30. So yeah, that answer is yes. And then what was the second part?
The second part was about, and is an increase in good fats also important for hormones?
Yeah, it is. In terms of like omega-3 fatty acids, I just did, I have a presentation coming up about like sports supplements and recovery. I've given that like a few times. I talk about the benefits of omega-3s, in terms of healthy fatty acids, not only for hormonal production, but just for, health risk and health profiles. One of the things that if people have like dry, flaky skin, a lot of times that they're low in omega-3, fatty acids and or even like vitamin D. So those are some things that you probably need to watch out for. But also with omega-3s to decrease the risk of cardiovascular disease. So yeah, the answer to your question is yes and yes.
And where do you find omega-3s?
Easy. You can go to Costco or Sam's Club and buy some fish oils. They come in 1,400 milligram, pills. They're a little big. So if you're someone that doesn't like big pills, there also is you can go to another local health store. They have like liquid fish oils as well. You just put it underneath your tongue, or just eat fish, 2 or 3 times a week. Depending on what type of fish. I would probably go obviously more towards the salmons, the mackerels, some types of tuna, maybe stay away from like the tilapia. Those are typically like lower quality, fishes. So yeah, those are some things that you can do as well.
How about Dover sole?
Some what?
Dover sole. It's one of my favorites.
Oh yeah.
Salmon's my favorite, but
yeah.
Or if you're vegetarian, chia seeds. I started eating chia seeds a month ago. I'm completely obsessed. They are so delicious, and they turn out to have an enormous amount of omega-3 in addition to various other health benefits. I put them with coconut milk, overnight sits in the fridge, comes out, and it's fantastic with berries.
Cod and haddock are good too.
Cod and haddock. Okay. And so Hela, what do you recommend?
Well, the more you can do it from food rather than supplements, that would be your first and best choice, just because you're getting the protein that you need also, and other things. So the easiest ones for most people are salmon, walnuts, and chia seeds. And you can even make chia seed pudding, which is kind of like what you might have been referring to.
Yeah.
Just be careful to ease into it, guys, because if we give you a recommendation to go way up on fiber and you hate us by the end of the week, it might be because we gave you too much fiber at once. So chia seeds have to be eased into, and other nuts and seeds in excess if you're having a lot of fiber, like if you're making a whole pudding out of it. But those are the three that are easiest for people to get in. And then if you don't like salmon, like you said, there's the fattier the fish in this case, the better for you, not because it's fried. I'm not talking about fried fish.
Oh, so Hala, we're losing you a little bit.
Because the degrees are, there's pretty much almost everybody could use it.
Okay, we lost you a little bit, but if you can hear us, and Siri, if you can hear us, I want a recipe for that breakfast cereal.
I will put it in right now into the chat.
Okay, yes, and we'll put it in our newsletter too, because we're always looking for something healthy that we actually don't have to shove down our children's throat that we want them to eat. It's kind of healthy and stuff like, for me, I'm looking for something good to supplement with. What factors can you adjust outside of your normal one-on-one or group workouts? We just talked about nutrition or the strength training. What type of strength training program, John, would you recommend for 40 to 50-year-old female? I'm just throwing it out there since I'm just looking at first names here, but
yeah, you need to choose, obviously multi-joint compound movements. You have to lift heavier. I mean, I would suggest, though, it depends on what your goal is too. I mean, there are women out there that still compete, like, over 40, obviously with the masters competition. So I'm just talking more just general population. They're not competing, they don't have any intention to compete, and that's okay. But, lifting heavy, as much as possible to maintain lean body mass, decrease risk of falls and fractures, activities of, daily living, all those small types of things. Again, people lose body mass, people lose lean body mass as they get older. They also lose a larger percentage of type 2 muscle fibers, which are responsible for high force and high power output activities. I would also suggest doing regular or spice some heavier eccentric movements in, because that's my research background is eccentric training. And I've talked about that before, is that for older individuals that need to be doing more eccentric stuff, not only to maintain eccentric strength, but obviously one of the reasons why elderly individuals tend to scoot their feet is because they lack overall body stability. Your body needs to survive in terms of obviously stability. So the reason they scoot their feet is because as a defense mechanism. And then if you cross over to the sports performance world with that, one of the reasons why people get injured a lot, mainly due to multi-directional sports where they have a deceleration and acceleration phase. Well, when you get injured in those particular circumstances, you have a loss of eccentric strength, obviously, and a loss of being able to decelerate, have eccentric force absorption, and then concentric force absorption, after that. So those are two ways that people get injured, both from a sports performance perspective and really from a lack of being able to decelerate and stabilize on the elderly side. So obviously with heavier lifting, obviously maintain, get the technique down. Hopefully you have a good coach, a good trainer. If not, send me a message on Instagram and I could, help set you up. But lifting heavier loads, it doesn't need to be like 10 sets of 10. You can look at 3 sets of 5 reps, with anywhere from 70 to obviously 80, 85%. So it doesn't need to be anything really crazy. But being able to maintain strength and resistance training is probably the closest thing to the fountain of youth that anyone is ever really going to get to.
And so Hala, give us the nutrition side of that, okay? Like we just talked about fish, we talked about the chia seeds, other little things we can do that will help us with those subtle changes that you talked about earlier.
I think one of the best things for people to do is if they want to shred for the summer or be their leanest, they need to go back several months and start making a tiny change. Like it might be that once Valentine's happened, they say, okay, I'm going to make a small change. And for my ladies, and I say ladies for me because most of my clients are between 40 and 60. right now. And that's where it's been for me for about the past 10 or 15 years. And some of their biggest problems are sweets and wine. So I'm sorry if that's hurting anybody's feelings or stepping on their toes, but it's hard for them to get that protein in if they're using all their calories on wine and sweets. I mean, really, they've used, if you tell them to get 100 grams of protein in, well, they're like, well, that's 400 calories. And I've already used almost all my calories on chocolate and I need 2 or 3 glasses of wine by the end of the night. So I've got to save up for that. And it's just happening for people. So that's really important for them to know that if they really want to prioritize some of those things, they might want to start weaning off of them as the spring approaches so that by the time the summer comes, they don't need a big drastic shred. And maybe weaning off of some of them and realizing maybe it was excessive in the first place. And so really finding a place that's a healthy balance. I'm not totally against either of those things, but most of my people have just come to culturally accept it to too great of a degree. And so when it's time to cut back, they're like, but this is normal. This is what everybody else is doing. And I'm like, well, if you want the lean body that you want, you're not going to be able to have all those indulgences and have the lean body that you want. You can have a super healthy body, but making small changes a couple months in advance so that your deficit is very subtle and not expecting, someone told me the other day, well, I haven't lost any, I changed the alcohol, like you said, and I haven't lost any weight. And I said, I thought you said 7 pounds. And he said, yeah, like I said, no weight. And I'm like, no, 7 pounds of pure fat tissue is a lot of weight. And if you did it for 2 more months, you'd already be at 20 pounds of pure fat tissue with nothing else changing. But we get so sick of waiting because people are so used to that fast approach. And so I think it takes some time to help them understand that if you want it to be sustained, if you want it to look good, if you want the skin to lay nicely over the muscle, if you're going in a bathing suit, for example, then the slow and steady is really how you want to do it. So start thinking farther back. So if you have a class reunion in October, you start thinking now, what are some tiny tweaks that I probably need to give up a little bit of anyway, or at least modify that I can do, and start making those and watch for very slow, subtle progress before you give up without giving up because of it's being slow.
And
That's the
what?
hard part.
What's interesting is I have another girlfriend who, for her to stay in shape, incentives, she sets goals like, I'm going to do this run. Okay. So she knows she's got to train for that run. It might be 3 mile, it doesn't have to be anything big, but we could set goals like, okay, in October, I'm going to go to this. And in December, I'm going to go to this. And in March, I'm going to go to this. And that'll give us these goals. It might not be an athletic goal. It might be, I've got a party here and I want to fit into this dress. And I've got a reunion there and I want to be this certain weight, or at least fit into whatever I want to wear. I'm going to take the screen just for a sec. And I'm going to show you guys what's coming up next in SCW land. You can see we've got Atlanta Mania coming up, and I'm going to show you guys a short video here. I love it. How motivating is that? It's too fun. And then we've also got a wonderful aqua convention coming up, which is going to be terrific. The aqua conference is all online, which is really fun. And I'll pop in and show you this quickie. And that's really fun. That's a great conference. it's a one-day event. It was really cool. It's on sale. It's $99. And we've got Atlanta Mania for $199. It's a full 3-day conference. So Hala will be there. Siri's going to join us in the fall. John, which show are you coming to?
I got Atlanta in August.
You will see you in Atlanta in August. So thank you guys for joining us today. Thank you,
Thank
Siri.
you.
Thank you, Sohaila. Thank
Thank
you so much,
you.
John. I appreciate it. And thank you, Sean, for running this webinar this evening. Thank you all for joining us. The recording will be out on probably Thursday, I think, maybe tomorrow. And we'll put that recipe for Siri and we'll make sure to put that research that Sohaila gave us. And John, I have no idea what we're going to put for you. Maybe. That's my son calling me. So I'm going to sign up for tonight. Thank you guys for joining.
Thanks, everybody, for coming. Have a great summer.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.